welcome back to my channel. Today I'm filming my 2021 eyeshadow palette ranking video. This is going to be a long one, so definitely make sure you have a snack or you're cleaning your house or doing something while you're listening to this, because oh boy, did I try a lot of palettes in 2021. Now, I feel like I tried so hard to be organized, but I already screwed this up, so I'm just going to put the number of the palette on the screen while I'm talking about it, because I tried to do sticky notes, but I feel like I'm already out of order. I already tried to film this once, and I feel like I screwed it up, so it is what it is. And then if the palette was gifted to me or I have a code with the brand or whatever, I'll put all that information on the screen, because I don't need to mention that for every single palette. We'll be here all day. I did write up some disclaimers as well for you guys, so I'm not including any palettes I've decluttered, because that would be a nightmare, and they're already gone from my collection, so I don't need to do that again. Not including palettes that didn't launch in 2021, because I got a lot of feedback that you guys liked it when I went back and tried older palettes within the year as well. And I usually include those in my monthly ranking videos, but I didn't want to include that in 2021. Again, the video would just be too long, not including brands that are closing. So for example, I am not going to be talking about Midas Cosmetics, because I feel like that's a little pointless. Although if you want to score some good deals on Midas, I think they're doing like half off on their website right now. And also, if I missed a palette here and there, it is what it is. I know I missed palettes because the other day I was filming my Love Notes video for Beauty Bay, and I pulled out two Viseart palettes, and I'm like, why isn't this in my ranking? So that was a little depressing, but it is what it is. Again, there's plenty of palettes to talk about in this video, so yeah, it is what it is. And I am planning on doing a full eyeshadow palette collection video sometime soon. I think I'm going to declutter some palettes though too as I'm filming this, because I kept a few things just to include in this video. So those are kind of disclaimers. As far as what I learned, definitely to be more organized. I keep a list or like a note on my phone. Every time I tried a palette in 2021, I tried to make sure I put a note on my phone. But I did learn some things in 2021. One is that I need to include the brand, the name of the palette, and the year that the palette launched, because I will definitely do a 2022 rankings video. And what I learned from 2021 was that sometimes I would just put Sigma and I wouldn't put the name of the palette. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I have no idea. I have like 10, 20 Sigma palettes. Like, which Sigma palette am I talking about? Is it a new one, an old one? I had no clue. So that's something I learned, and I like to include the year, because I cannot for the life of me remember all the eyeshadow palettes that launched in a year and when they all launched. So this is something I learned. In case you guys cared, I thought I'd share with you. And also, my whole goal in 2022 is to buy less eyeshadow palettes. I want to try and find ways to kind of talk about palettes I already have or a palette that I've bought. I want to try and think of ways to show it more than just once on my channel. So that's always something I'm working on. I feel like I have gotten better in some ways, but I still feel like there's a long way to go still. But that's it for the disclaimers. I'm going to stop blabbering and let's get into it. So my worst eyeshadow palette of 2021 goes to the Luster palette from Alter Ego. Honestly, I feel like this is ranking low because of the color story. I just really don't like the color story. I also ranked two other palettes in the last spot. So we have Shadow Kiss from Alter Ego, which is a cool tone palette. Just not my favorite color story. And then I have their Blooms palette, another one that is not my favorite color story. I usually love wearing reds and pinks and stuff like that, but this was just not it for me. So these are my worst palettes of 2021. I will say I'm not even sure if all those launched in 2021. I feel like they did, but I could be wrong. Just bear with me. Ooh, also I forgot to mention in the intro that I did ask you guys what palette I should wear in this video, and I had a lot of great suggestions. A lot of you told me to wear the worst palette. Some of you told me to wear my favorite palette. Some of you told me to combine like my top 3 palettes. Some people said to wear Club Nebula. So I really appreciate you guys and your suggestions. I will let you know. I will reveal what palette I'm wearing on my eyes at the end of this video, but if you have any guesses, definitely leave me a comment, because why not? Okay, sorry, I had to mention that. Now let's go back to more horrible palettes from 2021. I want to rank this Lyric palette pretty low here. This is one of the first 5-pan eyeshadow palettes that ColourPop did, and honestly it's nice. I mean, ColourPop always does okay when it comes to eyeshadow palettes. I just don't like the fact that there's a pressed glitter in this, and honestly I feel like their color stories with these 5-pan palettes have come a long way since that one launched. Now this Kayali palette, formerly Muse Beauty, is also ranking pretty low. I just really don't like the formula of this palette, and the quality was not as good as their first palette. What was that one called? It had the beautiful like lotus on the front. I was just not impressed with this palette. They have since, I think, redone this palette. They changed a few of the shades and things like that, so I'm hoping the quality's improved, but as far as I'm concerned, this palette totally turned me off this brand. Next is a palette I actually bought with my own money, and then the brand also sent it to me. This is the Angel palette from Unicorn Cosmetics, and it's just a big old pastel palette. I really tried to enjoy this, but not a fan. I've got the Facelift palette from Lunar Beauty. This was a redone version of Life's a Drag, and honestly I feel like I have way better rainbow palettes than this, and I also have way better neutrals than this, so overall just not a good palette in my opinion. Next is these two palettes from BH Cosmetics. I really like the concept of these palettes, but just not my favorites. Again, I feel like you're going to see a lot of pastel and rainbow palettes ranked pretty low because I have my holy grail rainbow palette, and pastels are just a hard one for me, so therefore those are ranking pretty low. Next is one I was so excited for. They launched these as singles sometime in 2020. They did a very limited run of the pastels from Give Me Glow, and when I saw that it was coming out in a palette form, I was so excited. I had to have this, and then I bought it, and it's just very meh. I will say the metallics are beautiful. I'm just not that crazy about pastel mattes, so hopefully I've learned my lesson. Next is a small indie brand. This is a really cool brand called Mira Beauty Co. And this was their first launch. I was so excited because they're immigrant owned, they're people of color owned. And so I love to support brands that are just a little bit different, just a little less cookie cutter. I will say this just wasn't my favorite formula. There was also pressed glitters in this palette. I will say they've definitely taken the constructive feedback that people have offered them. I did see some of their later releases. They did a separate pressed glitter palette. It just looks like they've made a lot of improvements. I would be very curious to know if they've made any improvements on their eyeshadow formula. It's definitely a brand I will continue to follow, and maybe if they do something very interesting, I will pick up from them again, but for now, I just am taking a break from this brand. Next is the Magic Lamp palette from Clarity Cosmetics. Now, mine came with a broken shade, and I feel like it kind of ruined my experience with this palette. I did film a video. I will say the metallics are pretty strong in this palette, but the mattes are just not up to the quality that I was expecting. I think I'm going to hold on to this palette though because I do like the color story a lot. I did order their Blooms palette. Hopefully that has arrived by the time you're seeing this video because I feel like this is going to take me forever to edit. But anyway, this is the Magic Lamp palette from Clarity. Next is another Lunar Beauty palette. I swear I really like Lunar Beauty, but apparently I picked up some duds in 2021. This is the Moonspell Volume 2. I was so excited because a lot of us in the beauty community love Moonspell 1, especially if you like purples and greens. That's a really strong palette, but this one just did not live up to the expectations I have for Lunar Beauty. Manny has a beautiful formula. His mattes are really nice. His metallics are very creamy, and this one just didn't do that same thing for me, so I'm ranking this lower. Next is another small indie brand. This is Unique Beauty. I believe they're a black-owned indie brand from the UK. I was so excited to try them because obviously if you guys shop for makeup from overseas, you know that it's pretty pricey to have palettes shipped. And so I was so excited, but I find this formula very similar to the Glam Shop formula. The metallics really puff out of the pans and it just seems very delicate. And I just don't like to deal with stuff like that because I don't want to have to worry about if I drop my palette accidentally. So Not my favorite. I just feel like these are overpriced for what they are. Next is a brand that I actually love so much, but I was not loving this palette last year. This is the Smells Like Holiday Spirit from Unearthly Cosmetics. Now, a lot of their palettes are ranking much higher than this one, but this one I just felt like wasn't the same quality that I know and love from them, so I'm ranking it much lower. Next is the pastel palette from Profusion. This is one of their newer palettes that launched last year. Now, this palette is $5, and as you can tell, it did a lot better than some of the other pastel palettes that I paid way more money for than this one. So it's nice, it's okay, it's not my favorite. Next we have Party in Puerto Rico from BH Cosmetics. I bought this honestly to film a video because it launched with 2 other palettes, and it's just a very average color story, so that's why it's ranking where it's ranking. Okay, this was Colored Rain's big comeback after the disaster that was Juicy Boost. And honestly, I was a little bit nervous picking this up because I was like, oh my gosh, what if it's as bad as Juicy Boost was? I will say not so bad, but the color story was very boring. I feel like both of these palettes are so similar that it was just like, what the heck? And there's a lot of wasted space in the palettes as well. Other than that, I think the theme was cute and everything else was pretty nice. I was just very disappointed in the color story. Okay, the next palette is owned by a celebrity. This is Tres Luce by Becky G, and it's the I Am palette. Now, this brand launched last year, and again, it's a nice palette, but it's essentially a colorful palette with some neutrals in it, and I just feel like it was neither here nor there. The quality was just very average, and I would not repurchase an eyeshadow palette from this brand anytime soon. Okay, so most of you know BH Cosmetics filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy, and this was one of the palettes that they were hoping would save the company because they did a few celebrity collabs, and this is their collab with Doja Cat. And honestly, this packaging for me is like a 10 out of 10. I'm such a gold bitch. I love it. But unfortunately, the formula on the inside just did not live up to the hype of BH formulas. I think this palette wasn't the lifesaver that they were hoping it would be. If you read any of the articles about their bankruptcy, they were saying that collabing with Iggy Azalea and Doja Cat was what they were doing to kind of save the brand. And I was like, wow, that's so misguided. Like, I mean, Doja Cat is great, don't get me wrong, but I feel like Iggy Azalea hasn't been popular in a hot second, and I don't know, I feel like the people that buy palettes nowadays, they're looking for that personal connection, and I feel like influencers and brand collabs do better than celebrities and brand collabs, but that's just my opinion. Anyway, this palette was not good, and you'll see BH palettes ranked much higher in this video, so just keep watching. Okay, next is this palette from ZZ Cosmetics. I was so excited to try this brand because I thought their packaging was beautiful. The reason this palette is ranking lower is because it has this very chunky glitter shade in it, and it's kind of a jumble of a palette. I really like the look I created with this palette, and I thought the eyeshadows was very pigmented. And of course the packaging is stunning, but I just didn't think this color story was very cohesive. Next is this little guy from Lethal Cosmetics. This was part of their Roots eyeshadow palette collection. I like this palette, but I just wish that it had a deeper, colorful matte shade in it. It was so hard to do kind of like the eyeshadow looks that I like to do with kind of a mid-tone matte selection, so I'm ranking this lower. Next are these two $5 palettes from Profusion. Honestly, I just think that these are such gorgeous color stories. If one of my favorite brands launched, like if Unearthly did these color stories, I'd be all over it. It's just that it's Profusion and they're okay, but oh my gosh, these color stories are gorgeous. Next are these two palettes from Nabla. Now, I do like Nabla as a brand, but again, I just thought this palette didn't really make the most sense. Like, it's a beautiful blue palette, and then they threw in this really random neutral brown, which doesn't really go with any of these shades. And then the palette called the Analog palette was nice, but it's just a neutral palette. So I feel like this one for sure was like, what? Like, it doesn't make any sense to have a metallic neutral shade in a blue palette. Okay, next we're ranking these little Viseart palettes. They call these the Petite Fours, and I definitely feel like these were way nicer color stories than the original ones they launched, but the price point of these are ridiculous, and all of these little palettes has like a neutral shade in them, which doesn't really make a whole lot of sense because I believe the Viseart pans are removable. So I just feel like for the price point to have a neutral matte brow bone shade in every single palette was kind of a ripoff for people that wanted to buy all four. Okay, I think you guys are going to be pretty shocked. I'm ranking the Flower Punk palette pretty low because I just feel like this wasn't Kaleido's best color story as far as my skin tone. I just didn't love the shades as much, and I just had a hard time with this color story. I know I've heard a lot of people say that this reminds them of the new Angelica and Oden's Eye Hella palette, but I will say the Hella palette has better deepening up shades for my skin tone, and so I appreciate that. You guys know I love Kaleidos as a brand, but yeah, this palette was just not my favorite. Okay, next is a Glam Shop palette. This is a beautiful purple palette, but like I said, this Glam Shop formula is a mess. I'm so happy I got to try them in 2021, but I just can't be bothered shopping from this brand anymore, so that's my story on that. Next is these palettes from Dede Signature. These are beautiful. They're like part of their Fruit Skewer collection, and some of these are definitely more interesting color stories than others. Very, very cute. I just don't love the packaging of these. I feel like there's a lot of wasted space and it just could have been better packaging in my opinion. Okay, I feel like you guys aren't going to be too surprised for seeing this rank so low. This is the Mary Jane palette. I feel like I'm still getting used to using shades like this and palettes like this. It's very cool tone, very grungy. I'm definitely coming around to the grungy color story more, but when it comes to cool tones, I feel like I still prefer colorful cool tones compared to the more neutral, smoky shades. So this is another palette that I want to try out more in 2022. So I'm ranking it lower, but we'll see. Maybe I will come around and really enjoy this palette in the future. Okay, so I just want you guys to know that everything from here up isn't bad. I just had to rank them, so it is what it is. All of the palettes I mentioned from now on are going to be palettes that I would recommend if you guys wanted to try the brand, or if you've been eyeing this particular palette. You're probably going to be just fine, but again, I had to do the rankings, so here we are. So in the next spot is this one from Give Me Glow. Oh my gosh, we had a bit of a disaster with this one, and honestly, now that I'm thinking about it, I don't know if this launched in 2021, but when I got this palette, I was so excited, and the palette was empty. It was a faulty palette. I still have the one that I got sent the first time around, but I basically got the palette with no eyeshadows in it, and it was pretty funny. I was so excited because I thought I had gotten the palette like super fast, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna film a video, and lo and behold, not the case. It was an empty palette, but this is a beautiful color story. I just feel like I have better versions of this palette. Next is a massive palette from Beauty Bay. This is their collaboration with Jade, and I usually love this Beauty Bay formula, but this is a giant, basically rainbow palette, and it's very intimidating. And it's just too much. Like, I feel like this could have been two palettes very easily. This section could have been like a warm tone, pinky red orange palette, and then this one would have been a more smoky, colorful palette. So yeah, it's just a little too much, which usually big eyeshadow palettes don't bother me, but for some reason I just did not like the size of that palette. Next is a little guy from Natasha Denona. This is the Mini Love palette from Valentine's, I believe, and I just didn't love this color story. I really like the Mini Crush palette a lot better, probably because it was more warm toned, if that makes any sense. Next are these three little guys from the ColourPop Holiday Vault. I only tried 3 of them. The other 2 I kept to gift to friends because they were more of those neutral color story. I really like how ColourPop is doing these really fun color stories, and oh my gosh, the blues in this palette, the 2 mattes, are amazing. Again, I just don't know why they threw in like 2 random neutrals in in there, but again, very nice, just not like my favorite, like run out and go buy, you know what I mean? Next is the Berlin 89 palette from Lethal Cosmetics. This palette is beautiful. It's their first pressed multi-chrome in here. Again, not a bad palette, just not my favorite. You're gonna hear that a lot. Next is the Pilbara palette from Geology Cosmetics. This is a small Australian-based indie brand. Just a beautiful color story, very subtle eyeshadows though, so that's why I'm ranking it where it's ranking. Okay, honestly, I don't know what I was thinking when I bought this palette. I definitely didn't need this. I think I bought it because it was on sale. It has some really beautiful colors in it, but I could definitely see myself decluttering this palette because I do believe this was limited edition for holiday 2020, I think. Ugh. I don't know. I kind of regret that one, not gonna lie. Here's another palette I could totally see myself decluttering. This is the Kimchi and Naomi Smalls collaboration. Another big old colorful palette and just okay, not my favorite. I've been getting PR from this brand called Estate Cosmetics and I honestly like their stuff. They're not the most colorful brand out there, but they do really good quality. This is a Canadian indie brand and look at this one, this Mystic Forest color story. You guys, if you know me, you know this is like right up my alley. So if you're into kind of subtle color stories and really good quality eyeshadows, highly recommend checking out Estate. Next are these cute little quads from Dede Signature. These are their fruit quads, I believe, and some of these are so cute and then some of them are just not the best. Like the other day, I swear one of my pans had fallen out, and I know I've heard from some people that there's oil seeping from some of their shadows. That doesn't necessarily bother me because I think it's whatever the chemicals are that go into making eyeshadows. But look at this one, it just like was completely shattered in the pan. So a little bit high maintenance, not my favorite. This blue quad though, so pretty. So those are my little quads from Dede Signature. Next is this cute little guy from Viseart. Again, not my favorite color story, but oh my gosh, I really kind of shocked myself by being interested in this. I did grab this on sale over Black Friday, and it's really cute, just it's okay. You know what I mean? It's just okay. Next is this little guy from Beauty Babe. This is a limited edition palette called the Golden Age. It launched with their Age of Opulence. A nice basic neutral palette, nothing I would recommend that you need to run out and buy. And then we have the Sigma Holiday palette for 2021. This is the Magnifique palette, and I really like Sigma's eyeshadow formula. And I feel like if you're just looking for something simple, you're into the purples, this would be a really good everyday eyeshadow palette. Okay, leave me a purple heart emoji if you made it to this portion of my video. I feel like I've been talking forever. Thank you for sticking with me. I will say I just went out there and one of my cats, she puked on some of my eyeshadow palettes. Sephora, oh my god, it's a good thing you're freaking cute because I'm gonna have to clean that up, and let's just say I'm dreading getting to like the 80s because yeah, she puked on two of my palettes. Super fun. Okay, let's keep going. Next is the Lost in Los Angeles palette by BH Cosmetics. This is a really pretty palette, great formula, but it's pastel, so you guys know how I feel about those. Next we have this collaboration palette called Hauntingly Glamorous by Unearthly, and I really think this is a nice palette. There are only 2 metallic shades in this palette, and one of mine was shattered, and the quality of the metallics is just not my favorite. It's a drier formula, so yeah, because of that, I'm ranking this lower. Next is the OFRA and Samantha March collaboration. You guys, I really like the face products in this palette, but if you know my taste in eyeshadows, you know these colors really don't do anything for me, which is totally fine because it's not my collaboration, and I think it really represents who Samantha is as far as her makeup style. Next is this guy from Morphe and Cherry Coke. I think this is a really nice palette. I did hear from you guys that you're seeing this now at like TJ Maxx and like Home Goods and whatnot, so if it's a good deal, I would say go for it because it's a decent formula. Next is this little guy from Glamlite. This is the Margarita palette. This is just my least favorite from their Happy Hour collection. I just feel like it's a mid-tone, colorful palette, and it just doesn't work for the kind of eye looks I like to do. Next, I'm ranking all of these little Sigma palettes. I think these are so nice. You can get these at Target now or on the Target website, and I feel like you definitely don't need all of them because some of them are pretty similar. But if you want like a small eyeshadow palette and you're not into eyeshadows like I am, these are great everyday palettes. I also love this one called Ivy. I mean, they really kind of did a really cool green smoky looking palette with that. So not the most interesting color stories, but some of them are really cool, and I just really like those palettes. Next is one that Sigma kind of like relaunched. This is the Dream palette with Sigma and Beauty Bird. I'm ranking this so low because honestly I just feel like this palette is so boring, and I feel like Sigma has this color story in other palettes, and I just feel like it's one of those palettes that really didn't need to relaunch. If anything, they should have just done a new palette with her and not just redone the same old palette they had. Here's a favorite basic B palette from 2021. This is a Cinnamon Swirl palette. Oh my goodness, this one is even more boring than the last one they did in 2020. But honestly, it's a beautiful palette. The metallics are really nice and it has a good formula. I can still smell the cinnamon. That's kind of interesting, but yeah, I hardly use this, but I think it's a cute palette, and I usually pick this one up every year to review for you guys over the holidays. Next is the Indigo Ink palette from Menagerie. Now, I did kind of talk about this as one of the worst eyeshadow palettes of 2021. It just doesn't really go very well together. You can do some really pretty blue looks, but then I'm kind of like thrown off by the additions of like the green and the peach and all that stuff. So not the worst palette, but definitely not my favorite from Menagerie. Next, we have Lethal is Dead from Teresa and Lethal Cosmetics. I think this is a cute color story. Definitely what Teresa's into, not my perfect color story. So yeah, just wanted to show you guys that. Next is the Sugar Drizzle Gnome Chrome Halloween eyeshadow palette. This is a all shimmer palette, and it was my first time trying the brand. I feel like for what you're getting with this palette, the price point is really good. Next is my favorite color story from the Decades collection that BH did. I just think this palette is gorgeous. The formula is really good. There's a really beautiful dark blue shade called Milkshake in here, and it's really nice. So I really like this palette if you see it at like a TJ Maxx or Marshalls in the future. Okay, this one's ranking higher because I like this color story, but man, oh man, these Glam Shop palettes are so fragile, so they're okay. I mean, I like them, I really do. I just don't know if it's worth like paying for shipping from Poland and all that song and dance. This is a new to me brand from 2021. This is What's Up Beauty, and they sent me this beautiful palette. I think the quality of this palette is amazing, and I can't wait to see what they do next. Okay, I'm ranking these 6 palettes together. Definitely one of the most hyped collaborations I feel like for the last couple of years is Sydney Grace and Temptalia. This was teased, I think, a little early, so people were really anticipating this. They did a light version and a dark version, and I received all of them, so I had a lot of fun playing with these. I think I would like to do more with these palettes because I feel like there's so many more possibilities. So yeah, let me know, did you guys pick up any of these palettes? Okay friends, things are starting to get really juicy now. Next is the High Tides palette by ColourPop. I feel like I had taken a little bit of a break from ColourPop, and this is the one that brought me back. I think this is such a beautiful teal blue palette. If you're into this color story, highly recommend picking this up if it's still available. Next we have one of my favorite neutrals. This is the Ambiance palette from Sigma Beauty. Such a gorgeous neutral palette. Again, I feel like I've gone on and on about how much I love Sigma's eyeshadow quality, so highly recommend that. Next I have a palette from Dede Signature. This is a really pretty neutral palette as well, and the reason I rank this higher than the Sigma palette is because it contains some really pretty duochromes, and I would love to see Sigma do something like this, just a little bit more interesting as far as color story. Next we have one of the holiday palettes from Juvia's Place. This is the I Live I Love palette. Such a fun color story. Their brushes from the holiday collection, I still have them, I use them all the time. Such a gorgeous handle, and I love that they matched it with the packaging of this palette. Next is one of the Olori palettes that I tried. This color story is so beautiful. I love it so much, and I love this format that Juvia's Place does. I have another really cute palette from ColourPop. This is the ColourPop and Tinkerbell collaboration. Such a pretty palette, really good quality. Highly recommend if you're looking for an affordable green eyeshadow palette. Next, I have these two amazing neutral kind of palettes from Juvia's Place. So we have the bronze palette, which looks like this, and then we have the blush palette, which looks like this. If you're into these kind of everyday shades, I would recommend checking those out. Okay, here's a Clarity palette I actually like. This is the Cobra palette from Clarity. Such a beautiful color story. So I feel like I had 2 misses and 1 hit with Clarity, and I have high hopes for the Blooms palette when it gets here, so we'll see. Here's the mini Xenon palette. I've been looking for this palette up and down, and I had pulled it for this video. So I just think this is kind of the palette that got me out of my little comfort zone as far as wearing shades like this. I used to be terrified of black matte eyeshadows because I didn't really know what to do with them. But once I started experimenting and learning that I could really deepen up any colorful shadow with a black matte, I really found appreciation in this palette. Next, we have the Natasha Denona Zendo palette. This is a really fun color story. I really enjoyed the looks I was able to create with this palette. It's kind of a mix of warm tones and some cool tone like blue shades. So kind of an interesting palette there. Next, I decided to rank all 5 of the birthstone palettes that I tried last year together. So we have Emerald, we have Citrine, we have Garnet, we have Peridot, and Turquoise, which is my birthstone. I will say these 2 green palettes are excellent. If you like green palettes and you want to find something affordable, I feel like these go on sale quite a bit on the BH website as well. But oh my gosh, this was actually a really good series. I wish I had done the buying and reviewing the palettes every month, but I had such an awful experience with the Zodiac collection that I decided not to participate. And of course, I kind of regret that decision, especially now because they're not doing a monthly series. I really thought we were going to see they were doing like a Zodiac series on the German BH Instagram page. I don't know if they're continuing that either with this whole bankruptcy thing, but oh my gosh, I was really hoping they would do a monthly launch this year, and it doesn't look like they're going to. Next, we have this LA Girl Main Stage palette. I really like this palette, and I get really excited when I see drugstore brands doing color stories like this. I feel like drugstore brands typically gravitate towards the more neutral colors that people can wear every day, and I really applaud LA Girl for kind of stepping outside of that box. They also just launched a palette called Testy Bestie, and I did buy that. I want to film with it. I just haven't gotten around to it yet, but yeah, very promising stuff from LA Girl these days. Next is this cute palette that I really want to play with some more. This is the Give Me Glow Bad Witch Club palette. Definitely one of my favorite color stories from them. We've got the Made by Mitchell Milk palette. I thought this was such a cool palette. I really like his color stories. He's very into vibrant colors, and yeah, I like everything about that palette. Next is the Glamlite and Michaela eyeshadow palette. This is very pretty, very sparkly, and if you're into colorful shadows, recommend that. Next, I have an Alter Ego palette that I'm not going to talk shit about. This is the Canyon palette, and it's really nice. The quality is really good too, so if you're looking for an affordable neutral palette, highly recommend this one. Next is the Basic B of Basic B palettes. This is the ABH Primrose palette. Really good quality. Really wish they had done more versions of this palette, like a light skin tone version and a deep skin tone version, but alas, we only got one. I'm still waiting for ABH to launch more eyeshadow palettes. I'm so bummed that it seems like they're kind of focusing more on the Norvina line and less on the original ABH line, and I just was such a fan of the ABH eyeshadow palettes. I really miss them launching more eyeshadow palettes. Next, I think this is the only Urban Decay palette you're going to see in this video. This is the Naked Wild West. Actually, it was a very good palette, and yeah, I like it. I am happy I have it. I bought the Cyber this year, so it's not being included in this video. That palette was hot garbage, so I feel like we should really give Naked Wild West the hype it deserves, because I feel like I'm gonna die before Urban Decay comes out with another really good eyeshadow palette. Anyways, we have the Sigma palette next. This is Sigma's collaboration with Disney. They did this gorgeous palette for Cinderella. I think this palette is absolutely stunning. A really great way to do a Disney collab without alienating some of us older folk, if you know what I mean. So we're almost done. Get excited. So next is the New Romantics palette by Beaute. Such a fun, fiery palette. I just think that Beaute has such a gorgeous eyeshadow formula. So if you're a fan, highly recommend checking out their palettes. You guys, this palette is so good. This is the Charlotte Tilbury Holiday palette. I buy these every year. This is the Instant Eye palette, the Smoky Eyes. Oh my gosh, her formula is so sophisticated and beautiful. The reason I'm not ranking this higher is of course the price, and then the color story is not that mind-blowing, but oh my gosh, I would love for her to do like a jewel tone palette like that for 2022, hopefully. Next is one that kind of snuck up on me. This is the Jen Atkins and e.l.f. collaboration. I was like obsessed with this palette. I was telling everyone how they needed to buy this palette. It's so good. It's definitely better than what we're used to when it comes to e.l.f. eyeshadows. Highly recommend. The face products are absolutely gorgeous as well. Next we have this little cutie from Dede Signature. This is the pumpkin spice quad that they did, and it came out pretty recently. Gorgeous quality. I love the shadows. They are so creamy and nice, and yeah, this is very nice. Next are some palettes from BH's, what was this called? What was it? It was like Out Loud or Shout Out or something. I don't know. Anyway, I have two of these. This Let That Ish Go palette is a gorgeous green palette, and this Do Not Disturb palette is honestly really unexpected and beautiful. This matte blue and matte purple pastel-y shades are some of the better pastels that I've experienced in my life, so very happy with those two palettes. And then this was another stellar collection from BH. This was like around Halloween of 2021, and this is the Absinthe palette. Such a gorgeous green eyeshadow palette. I ran to my Ulta and grabbed that on launch day, and I do not regret it at all. Okay, this was kind of a silly purchase, but I kind of collect Natasha Denona at this point. This palette basically has all of the shades from the Metropolis, which I guess is discontinued now, so this is as close as you guys are going to get to the Metropolis palette if you didn't buy it. It's a really cute palette. It's really good quality. I hope she does more mini palettes like this because they're so fun. I would love to see her do something with like some blues and purples. Am I asking for too much here, Natasha? I don't think so. Next is this It's a Mood palette by ColourPop. So good. I am so tempted by these makeup palettes always, but I have to remind myself that they don't get enough use. So I definitely kind of shouldn't have bought this, but I'm so glad I did because it has all of those like moody, smoky, colorful shades that I'm into. Next, I'm ranking all of these for Juvia's Place quads. Some of these are definitely nicer than others, but just for the sake of time, I ranked them all together. This green one called Army is so pretty, and I also love the shade called Mints. Like, these are so unique for Juvia's Place because I don't feel like they do greens as much as they used to. And then this one called Grays is really nice. I wish this had a black in it. So overall, a really cute collection of quads, but I feel like there's room for improvement here. Next is the Natasha Denona Retro palette. This is such a pretty palette. If you're into those berry shades, highly recommend. Okay, I feel like you guys would expect the Natasha Denona palettes to rank higher, but some of these indie brands are really fucking things up. This Vampirism palette, I didn't think this was gonna be my favorite, and honestly, I will say I prefer the Sorceress palette, but the Sorceress palette came out in 2020. I bought it in 2021. That one's been out for a while. This palette is so good. It's got some beautiful multi-chromes. If you're into this color story and you're able to support an indie brand, I would highly recommend checking them out. Next, we have more multi-chromes. This is the multi-chromes from Lethal Cosmetics. Now, I tried really hard not to just rank a bunch of multi-chrome eyeshadow palettes in the top section because I try to kind of just rank things based off of my favorite color stories and know that multi-chromes are nice to have. I feel like they're kind of like an add-on, you know, like when you buy a really nice purse and then you add a scarf or you add some kind of accessory. I think multi-chromes are kind of that in the realm of eyeshadow palettes. So I didn't try to rank all of my multi-chromes at the top. So this palette is gorgeous. I do believe you can buy these individually as well. Next is a brand I tried for the first time in 2021. This is Milan Row and Doodles by the Bunny. Such a fun green eyeshadow palette if you're into green eyeshadows. I thought the quality was excellent. This does have a pressed glitter in it though, so it does make it rank a little lower. Next are these adorable palettes from Huda Beauty. These are the Obsession palettes. So we've got Wild Jaguar, which is kind of like a smoky purple palette. We've got the Python palette, which I think is my favorite one. And then we have the Chameleon, which is a really fun, like fiery color story with a pop of purple. Next is the Not Normal palette from Unearthly Cosmetics. This has a really fun, grungy color story, so really appreciate that. Oh my gosh, it's like 12:30 and I've been prepping and filming all morning. Leave me a blue heart emoji if you made it this far. Now let me show you. These are like my favorite palettes, honestly. After trying as many palettes as I have in the last year, I obviously have more than like top 10. This is like my top 30 palettes, maybe my top 40. There's so many good ones. So let's start off with the Natasha Denona Circle Loco palette. This is such a pretty palette. I feel like I could probably rank this a little bit higher than I did, but I feel like I want to play with this more. Oh, you guys, I would just, sometimes I just think that some of my more beautiful palettes get such a little love from me because I'm always trying new things, which is why I'm trying to buy less in 2022. But this is a stunning, colorful palette from Natasha Denona. I would love to see more colorful palettes from her. I know you guys have probably all seen the palette that was leaked. I haven't talked about that on my channel yet, but oh, I'm so excited for that palette to launch. Next, I have the Flare palette from It's Belle. Like I said, I tried really hard not to just rank all my shimmer palettes in the top categories because as gorgeous as these are, I feel like I tried really hard to rank like color stories more than like special shadows and things like that. So yeah, this is the next palette. Next, I have these two gorgeous palettes from Glamlite, and I love Glamlite's quality, and I'm so excited for their Hershey collection to launch. You guys will probably see this after that palette collection has launched, but at the time I'm filming this, they haven't launched those yet. I'm so excited, but my big complaint with Glamlite is as much as I love their formula, I feel like I really wish they would take more time and come up with more innovative color stories. I feel like they do a lot of monochromatic palettes and it feels like it's the same regurgitated shades. And even me as an affiliate, like I have a really hard time coming up with more reasons why you should buy from them when it's kind of the same thing. Like the new Hershey palettes are so cute, but again, they're monochromatic pinks, purples, blues. I love it, but I also feel like it's tired in the same breath. I hope that makes sense. Next are more Glamlite palettes. I think these are so gorgeous. If you're looking for a monochromatic green, a brown, or a purple palette, look no further than Glamlite. These are the rest of the palettes from their Happy Hour collection. Such pretty metallic shades. I've swatched these all on my channel before, so if you've been curious about these palettes, I would recommend checking out the videos. Next is one of my favorite launches from 2021. It's the Saga Freya collection from Oden's Eye. If this is your first video watching my channel, I had a baby last year and we named her Freya and Loki. I don't want to say I named her after an eyeshadow palette, but this collection from Oden's Eye was definitely the inspiration behind her name. Obviously, Freya is a Norse mythology goddess, and she's the goddess of love and sex, and she's very powerful. There's a beautiful, beautiful mythology behind her. Before I knew more about Freya, I heard the name from this collection, and then I proposed it to my husband, and he immediately loved it, especially after he found out that Freya rides a chariot pulled by two cats, which he's a massive cat lover, in case any of you cared. Perfect name for her because of how powerful she is, how much she loves cats. We live in North Dakota, which is very much influenced by Nordic culture. The fact that we named her Freya just is like so meaningful to us. But anyway, I'm going off on a tangent, but I love that Saga Freya collection for more than just the fact that they're eyeshadow palettes. Next is this little guy from Natasha Denona. This is the mini Biba palette. Now I do own the full-size Biba palette, and I will say I really like this mini. I mean, I know it's kind of basic and it's like a bunch of neutral shadows, but super cute. If you're into something small and you just want some everyday shades, highly recommend checking that out. Next is one of my faves. This is the Supreme Bronze from Artist Couture. I really like the Supreme Nudes, so I was so happy to see a part 2. And these are deeper, warmer shades, so I really like this palette, really like the quality from Artist Couture as well. Next is such an underrated palette. This is the Miss Claus, the Litless palette. This is BH's Holiday palette. I almost passed on this palette because of how much I disliked the Doja Cat palette, and then I saw some of my YouTube friends review this palette and they were so impressed with it. I was like, okay, well, clearly I need to pick this up, and I did, and I'm so glad I did because it's one of BH's best palettes in my opinion. Next we have Pat McGrath's Celestial Odyssey palette. This is her holiday palette and it's beautiful. I like the packaging and everything. The reason I'm not ranking this like in the top 10 is because it doesn't have enough mattes, and I really wish Pat McGrath would do some colorful matte shadows for us mere mortals. Next is a gorgeous palette. I love this palette so much. I want to use it more, but again, duty calls and we gotta film eyeshadow palette videos, so this one doesn't get enough love. But this is the falliest of fall palettes, the Be Perfect Carnival 4 palette with Stacey Marie. So good. The quality is so good. Oh my gosh, I love that palette so much. Okay, next we have the Rose Quartz palette by Huda Beauty. I feel like ColourPop is doing this color story, so many different versions of it, like Rose Quartz, and then they did the Rock Candy palette. And the reason I haven't bought those is because I have this palette and it's gorgeous, and of course Huda's quality is a bomb. And look at this freaking gorgeous packaging. Next is a Mothership palette. This is Utopian Dream. Oh my gosh, I have a shattered shade. Did I drop this? Did my cats? Oh my god, I'm gonna kill them. I'm gonna kill them. Oh, I've never had a broken shadow from Pat McGrath. This is definitely new to me. They must have like literally gone surfing on my eyeshadow palettes. Okay, I pressed it back in, but this is my favorite Pat McGrath palette, Utopian Dreams. So beautiful. Look at this gorgeous shade. It's just a pretty bronzy color, but oh my gosh, I love how creamy her eyeshadows are. Yes, they really destroyed that shadow, so I've got a lot of it on my hands now. Okay, next we have these two It's Belle palettes. Again, I love It's Belle's formula. I love the quality of their shadows. I just don't want to rank just all metallic palettes at the top because I don't feel like, and don't take this the wrong way, but I don't think it takes a lot of creativity to just make all metallic palettes. I love these palettes. I love the formula, but anyone could put together 9 metallic shadows and call it an eyeshadow palette, in my humble opinion. Next is my go-to rainbow palette. I love pairing this with all those metallic palettes I've been showing you guys. This is the Blends palette from Blend Bunny, and it's gorgeous. It's so easy to use. Highly recommend if you're looking for a easy, blendable rainbow palette from an indie brand. Oh my gosh, you guys, the last basket. Oh, this basket contains all of my favorite eyeshadow palettes. This is the Creme de la Creme. If my house were to burn down, I don't think that's wood, but anyway, these are the palettes that I would save after I saved my cats, my dogs, my husband, my child. all of those things, then we'd come running down to the makeup room. Anyways, let's start off with, oh my god, I like tried to like shove them all in here so I didn't have to get back up. But we have the Paris palette. This is the Passion in Paris palette from BH Cosmetics. This palette is so beautiful. I think this is the only BH palette in this section of this video, and for good reason. It has the most gorgeous color story of all BH palettes in my opinion. Let me just give you guys some swatches of these metallics. Like, so nice. And what, you can buy this palette for like 10 bucks sometimes when it's on sale. So yeah, check that out. Next is this little cutie from Glamlite, and this is an Australian indie brand. I hummed and I hawed over buying this palette, but honestly, I'm so glad I did. It has a multi-chrome shadow called Baubles, and like her metallics are so stunning. She's got a new palette coming out called the Nocturnal palette, and I cannot wait to get my paws on that palette. Next is one of my favorite purple palettes. This is the Menagerie Flight Club palette. I have like raved about these metallics for so long. They definitely amped up their metallic shadows. Menagerie's always had beautiful metallics, but these ones are like on another level, so I love that purple palette. It's my go-to purple palette. Next is the Annette collaboration with Menagerie. This is the Serenity palette. I missed this palette on the first launch, but boy oh boy did I set myself a little reminder. I also signed up to be notified when they restocked something, and that's how I got this palette. I was notified that it had come in stock, and I just hopped right to it. Next is another Blend Money palette. This is the Surge palette. And the reason I ranked this one a little bit higher than the Blends palette is because it has some gorgeous colorful metallics. It also has neon shadows in it, which are very hard to formulate. Some really grungy colorful shadows as well. So that's why I ranked it a little bit higher than their Rainbow palette, because I feel like this was a little bit of a twist on their Rainbow palette. Next is a gorgeous Glamlite palette. This is the You Beauty palette, and it contains some gorgeous shadows as well. This is a beautiful shade called Good Day. They have this gorgeous shade called Old Mate, and then this one called Chalkers, I believe is how you would say that. Look at these metallics. Oh my goodness. Stunning palette. Love that so much. Next is a palette that contains one of my favorite multi-chromes, this shade Fancy from the legendary Diversa collection from Oden's Eye. This is their collaboration palette with the Fancy face. And that multi-chrome called Fancy is so good. I don't know if these are available anymore because they were a limited edition, but oh my gosh, I feel so bad for all the people that missed out on those palettes because they're so good. Next are two of my favorite neutral palettes. These are the Natasha Denona Glam Face palettes. I just ranked them together, but they're so stunning. These are face and eye palettes, and when I first saw that these were launching, I was really unimpressed. But once I got the dark palette in my hands, I was like, okay, I gotta get the light one too. And so yeah, these are like the only neutral palettes I would really need in my life if I lost all of my other neutral eyeshadow palettes. Next is this beautiful Nomad palette. This is the America's Parks palette. Oh my goodness, Nomad Cosmetics is a brand that you guys should not be sleeping on because they have such an interesting concept. All their palettes are based on places that they've traveled to, and they always nail the color story. They do such a good job. I also love their price point, and it's just such a creative idea for a brand, so very happy with that. And spoiler, the next palette is also one from Nomad. This is their Haunted Europe palette. They launched this around Halloween of 2021, and it's so gorgeous. Of course, I have to swatch the greens, but I love their color story. And they recently launched their Whistler palette for 2022, and that's like a fave of mine. So yeah, I just really enjoyed this brand a lot. Next is a gorgeous palette from a indie brand in the UK. This is the Lois Cosmetics Meet Me in the Underworld palette, and this is what this palette looks like. I feel like for me, this is a pretty basic color story, but this color story combined with the amazing formula is what really makes this palette stand out in my collection. They've got a new palette coming out called Meet Me at Midnight, and I cannot wait. She's been sneak peeking the shades. I feel like that palette's gonna be one I pick up in lightning speed when it launches. So if I were to tell you guys like my perfect neutral eyeshadow palette, it would be something like this. This is the Red Dragon palette. This is another one of the legendary Diversa palettes from Oden's Eye, and this one was a collaboration with Judy. Now, to some of you that really like neutrals, this might not seem like a neutral palette, but for me, there's a lot of brown shades. There is this one interesting shade called Jade, which is a beautiful kind of pukey green color, but the rest of the shades are definitely more like my kind of neutrals. The metallics are gorgeous. There's these beautiful duochrome shades. There's a wonderful multi-chrome in this palette as well. I don't think you can buy these anymore, so I'm gonna stop singing their praises, but so good. Love that palette so much. Next is one of my favorite Nomad palettes. This is the Fire and Ice palette. This was their Iceland themed palette that they launched at the start of 2021, and this has some really gorgeous metallic shades. This one was inspired, I think, kind of like by the Northern Lights and the volcanoes in Iceland, and I feel like they did such a good job capturing that with this palette. Okay friends, we're getting really close to the top here. Now we have the Lush Life palette from ColourPop. This is my favorite ColourPop palette of all time. It's so beautiful, and for people like you and I that love color, maybe this isn't that exciting, but oh my gosh, I just feel like for once ColourPop just gave me a colorful palette. I think they nailed the theme because you guys know I love palm prints, so I was all over that palette from them. Next is one of my favorite unexpected palettes of 2021. This is the Unearthly in the Dark palette. This was one of their holiday palettes of 2021. I recently swatched this in a video, so I don't want to swatch it again, but it's so good. Next is my Club Nebula palette. This is the collaboration between Kaleidos and Angelica. And let me tell you, I was gonna tell you guys at the end, but the palette I have on today is actually her new collaboration with Oden's Eye, and it's the Hella palette. So I decided to do a look with the Hella palette because I'm filming this video around the announcement time of the Hella palette, and I've just seen so many YouTubers create beautiful looks with the Hella palette, and this one was inspired by Angie. So yeah, I had to create this look because I saw her wearing something similar, and I was like, oh my gosh, I need to do that look for my ranking video. So that's actually the palette I'm wearing. I was gonna wear my #1 palette, but I've just been so inspired by the Hella palette that I decided to use it. But Club Nebula has some really gorgeous shadows. I will say, I think I like the Oden's Eye palette just a little bit more because it has all those gorgeous greens in it, and you guys know green eyeshadow is like my favorite shade of eyeshadow. Next is the Codain palette by Adept Cosmetics. Oh my goodness, Adept Cosmetics has really fluffed up the game for all shimmer palettes. Her metallic formula is so stunning. I know she has some palettes launching this year as well as like a collaboration palette, so I can't wait to see that. But look at these metallics. Let me tell you, spoiler alert, the rest of the Adept palettes are like in my top 10 palettes, so let's get to those next. Okay friends, we've arrived at the top 10 palettes of 2021. They're all sitting in front of me. Like I said, I tried really hard not to just pick all of the all shimmer palettes I own because I love those. But in the 10th place is the Melt Cosmetics Mariposa palette. I just feel like this palette is a 10 out of 10. The color story is amazing. I love the packaging. I love the theme. It's just so good. This is Melt's good formula. I feel like Melt is kind of like a Too Faced brand. They have the really good Melt and then the oh my gosh, this is hot garbage Melt, and this one is definitely 10 out of 10 for me. Next we have the Adept Cosmetics Eminent New palette. This was one of their later launches of 2021, and it's a gorgeous palette. I love this shade called Hawthorne. It's like a beautiful white, purple, teal, green. It's a beautiful multi-chrome shadow from Adept, and I just really feel like Adept was the brand that really pioneered and nailed those gorgeous all shimmer palettes. I feel like you can find a lot more of them now because they're becoming more popular, but I feel like the brand that kind of really did the high quality metallics and duochrome slash multi-chrome palettes, it started with Adept, I think, in my opinion. Next is one of my favorite color stories from 2021. This is the Witching Hour palette by Unearthly Cosmetics. I just thought this color story was so up my alley. It's so fun and bright and just reminds me of Halloween, really gets me in the spirit of Halloween, and it's beautiful. Is it like the most life-changing eyeshadow palette? Is it this color story that I've never seen before? I don't think so, but the fact that she was able to narrow it down into these 9 eyeshadows really caught my attention. Okay, next is the Beauty Bay Age of Opulence palette. Oh my goodness, this palette is just like the most beautiful metallics, and it's just like a deep jewel tone palette. These metallics are to die for. I honestly can't believe that they sell this palette for like 20 bucks. It's so good, which is why, of course, it's in my top 10 best palettes of 2021. Next, we have the Giant Wolves palette by Annette and Oden's Eye. This is my favorite one from the legendary Diversa collection that launched last year. She has the most beautiful shades in this palette. I could totally see Annette when I look at this palette, and her multi-chrome called Eternal is to die for. Like, look at this shade. It flips from like a blue to a green to a gold to a purple, like so many stunning shades. And again, I know I've said this 100 times, but I'm really sad for the people that missed out on that legendary Diversa collection because it was limited edition. Oh my gosh, you guys, we've made it to the top 5. I feel like I've been doing this for hours now, and I'm so excited. So yeah, take the time, guess your top 5, guess what my number 1 palette of 2021 is if you haven't already. Also, leave me an animal emoji if you made it this far in this video, because holy smokes, you guys are the MVPs. Okay, so in 5th place is a gorgeous green eyeshadow palette. I just couldn't not rank this at such a high spot because I feel like this is like the green palette. So this is the Ace Beaute Tropical Vibes palette. It only has 3 metallics, but man oh man, does this palette pack a punch. Such gorgeous variety, and yeah, I just love this so much. One of my favorite green eyeshadow palettes. Next, we had to give a shout out to Danessa Myricks for creating such a gorgeous multi-chrome metallic goodness filled eyeshadow palette. I mean, she like really nailed it with this palette. I wasn't gonna buy it because I was looking at the price tag and I was like, oh, Danessa, you did not think I was gonna buy a $100+ eyeshadow palette, did you? But then this was selling out like crazy, and I was able to snag it before it completely sold out at all of the retailers. Such a stunning palette, really fun formulas. I'm so happy that Danessa Myricks created that palette because I think it really made those special eyeshadows much more accessible to the mainstream audience. Okay guys, we made it to the top 3, and Freya has been hanging out with me the whole time. She's such a trooper, so I can't wait to get this makeup off and take these earrings off and relax. But let's talk about my top 3 palettes. I don't think you guys would have guessed it, but I ranked this palette, the Fall Magic palette from Unearthly, in the 3rd spot because I just died when I saw this color story. It's like the perfect embodiment of fall, and honestly, I don't think I've ever seen a palette like this before. I actually ranked the Witching Hour palette over this one when I ranked my Unearthly eyeshadow palettes, but I feel like I'm allowed to rank things however I want, and that is what I did. These metallics are so divine. Like, look at this green shadow. It's so beautiful. This purple shade called Change is stunning. Magic is beautiful. The mattes are gorgeous. Like, these are so, so nice. They feel so buttery and gorgeous and just so expensive, and the Unearthly price point is great. I think they're in that mid-range price point, which makes them very accessible. Plus, you can use a code if you want to. But yeah, this was my third favorite palette of 2021. Okay, in second place, best palette of 2021 is the Ninhydrin palette from Adept Cosmetics. Oh my goodness, listen, I told you guys I was gonna try really hard not to rank all the metallic palettes in the top, but I had to. I mean, look at these eyeshadows. They just look wet on my eyelids and they're so gorgeous, and I just am in eyeshadow palette heaven. Like I said, I can't wait to see what Adept has in store for 2022. I'm so excited. Love the Ninhydrin palette so, so much. Okay, did you guys guess my number one palette? Drum roll, please. I'll let you guys take a minute to just like process it. I feel like this palette is honestly just me in a color story. Gorgeous greens, some fiery reds if I'm feeling like a neutral bish, but it's so good. The reason I picked this as number one, there's a lot of reasons. Packaging, excellent. Quality, excellent. Price point, amazing. Metallics, wonderful. Mattes, blend like a dream. I love this palette, so it only made sense for this to be my number one palette of 2021. I can't believe it, you guys. I did it. I did it. I finally did it. I ranked all of my eyeshadow palettes of 2021. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Give it a thumbs up if you watch it all the way to the end. Give it a thumbs up even if you didn't watch it all the way to the end. Leave me a comment, just say hi, just engage with this video because it really helps out my channel. It helps it get suggested to other people that are looking for ranking videos. I feel like I have 100 things I could say here at the end, but honestly, I'm just glad this video is done. Thank you so, so much for watching, and make sure you're subscribed if you haven't already. 2022 has a lot of good stuff in store, so I will see you guys in my next video very, very soon. Bye!